It's been since September, my last video. Well, hello, my name's Ryan if you don't know me. And in this video, you saw the title, I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know about how I personally have gained 7 to 10 kilos in 180 days on 3 separate occasions. So before we get into obviously the video, just to give you a little background on like my transformation and stuff. This was me in 2021 and this is me now in 2025 in my most recent physique update. I've gained just shy of 30 kilos over the space of 5 years and I've been able to keep that pretty lean, some would say. I don't want to bore you guys. I'm here to stay on the YouTube channel. I won't have a hiatus like I have again. One of my friends reached out to me saying, what are you doing with the YouTube? Yeah, this video is just to tell you exactly, all the steps I go through in order to execute a bulk where you can gain 7 to 10 kilos in 180 days. Basically just everything I've done, right? And it's nothing amazing, it's nothing incredible. It's just about knowing what to do and keeping it as simple as possible, essentially, right? So long story short, my philosophy is do the least to get the most. Before I get into like the first thing that I do, I just want to put you guys in the right frame of mind, right? Because it's very important to understand, first of all, how progression in the gym works so you can get your expectations in alignment with the reality of how things work. Because a lot of the time, people misunderstand how long things take, what to do, how hard to do them, and all of that stuff, right? So, nothing bad. I just sort of want to give you that frame of mind and sort of teach you guys what I teach my clients as well and how I personally think of, how muscle growth works, right? So muscle growth works just like builders building a house. Now, if you're an OG to this channel, you'll probably be absolutely fucking fed up of me saying that because I've said it so many times in the past, right? But I say it so many times for a reason. It's very, very important because they both relate very, very closely, right? If we think about it, builders can't necessarily build the walls first. They can't necessarily fit the door or the windows in, or they can't polish off the roof, right? But the very first thing they've got to do after they've obviously mapped out their blueprint and what they're actually going to build is the foundational layer in the ground, right? Whether you're watching this in an apartment, in a building, in your house, in a bungalow, in a mansion, in skyscraper, I don't know, wherever you are, right? As long as you're in a building, right? Below the building is what's called a foundational structure, right? I don't know any technical terms because I'm personally not a builder, and you've probably figured that by me making fitness videos. But you can't build the house without having the foundational layer underneath. And yes, it probably is a pain in the ass to build this, and the builders would probably just prefer to build the house and get out of there, right? Get their paycheck and go on to the next one. But they've got to spend a little bit of extra time on the foundation at the start, right? And it's the exact same thing with the gym, right? So many people want results so quickly, and what that basically means is they go into following some ridiculously complicated workout plan and they get themselves all stuck up in, 200 grams of protein a day and just being really, really strict with themselves. But that is basically like them trying to build the house before they've built the foundation. They can't do that, right? And as I said, the same thing applies with your physique. You've got to build the foundations in the ground first, which is your knowledge, your action plan, learning the basic principles, and just taking things slow, easy, not being too hard on yourself, and just taking it one step at a time, right? You can't necessarily skip straight to ladder 10 if you're climbing up a ladder. You've got to climb step by step, and that is exactly what building the foundations consists of. And you need to build your house properly, essentially. The house in this situation is your physique, and you need to build it accordingly in order so you can make the long-term progress you truly want to. I hope that sort of got you in the right frame of mind. I just want to get into this video now. So the first thing that I want to go over and how I've gained 7 to 10 kilos in 180 days on 3 separate occasions is through building my foundations. That's why I just went through that little frame of mind with you guys. In my opinion, and from my experience, right, I have found that the foundations come down to 2 layers in particular, right? The first layer is actually having the knowledge of what to do and what contributes towards your end goal, which is obviously muscle growth and bulking, right? And then the second thing is that you want to build an action plan, obviously in accordance to how things work, right? The reason why this is very important, think of it like a roadmap, or you want to go on a road trip, or just like imagine I wanted to travel to the other side of the country, right? I need to do 2 things. I need to have a destination In this situation, that's the knowledge, right? And you need to have a route to how to get there. So the knowledge is very, very simple. It actually surprises me how many people overcomplicate this shit online, right? Like, it's actually, it's fair play to you, because it's a very impressive skill how so many people make you know, make the gym out to be so complicated, because it really isn't. It's so simple once you know the fundamentals, right? I personally, you know, from my growth and what I've learned, right, I've sort of boiled it down to three pillars. The first pillar is T, then D, then R. Training, diet, recovery. That's it. That's all you need to grow muscle. You know, obviously you're going to go in, you know, dive into the details a little bit, but that's exactly it. If you zoom out and look at it from a macro perspective, that's all you need. You need to take care of your training, because you need to, you know, you need to put your body against resistance, therefore it can adapt to grow bigger and stronger. And then you need your diet in order to feed your body and your muscles the correct nutrients and the amount of nutrients in order to help your body grow bigger and stronger. And you need to make sure you're recovering properly, because, well, your muscle actually, or your body actually changes and transforms over time when you're resting, right? You know, you've got to think about it like a phone battery. You know, if you want it to charge fast, you've got to leave it alone for a little bit. And it's the exact same thing with your body. You've got to let your body rest. You've got to let your body recover, right? So they are the three pillars, that muscle growth. And if you want to gain 7 to 10 kilos in 180 days, that is what you need to build your action plan upon. Now, we're just going to go into the action plan right now. So, you know, everything I basically organized for myself in order to execute gaining 7 to 10 kilos. You've probably heard me say that enough times, and I'm getting sick of repeating myself. The first thing that we need to obviously address, we're going to go through the pillars one by one. So the training side of things. So there are three things that you really need to just nail down on, and it's very simple. What exercise split you're going to follow, what exercises you're actually going to do, and the rep ranges that you're going to follow, and the sets, right, in the workout plan. So essentially, you just need to make your own workout plan, right? The reason why we want a split and we want a plan is because it gives us order, right? And it gives us structure. And this is something that's really, really important from the gym, to avoid us going into the gym like a headless chicken, not knowing what you're doing, but also so you can have that mental advantage, that visualization. If you know exactly what you're going to do, then you can start to get in the mindset on the way to the gym or when you're about to leave your house. And this is going to incentivize you to just work hard, right? However, if you're not mentally in the game when you get into the gym, because you're going with the flow and you don't necessarily know what you're doing, then it's going to be a tough session. You're probably not going to perform your best, and we want to perform our best, am I right? So they are basically the three things that I would recommend, you know, in terms of training, right? I would tell you what I'm doing, you know, my personal workout plan and the exercises that I do and the sets and the reps and stuff, but it wouldn't be of any benefit to you. And the reason why I say that is because I've been training for almost 5 years. I've got the experience to the point where, you know, I've started to get to know my body a lot better, what training I respond to better, how many days a week I respond to better. Therefore, that wouldn't necessarily help you, because the gym is an individual game. You find what works best for you over time, right? Now, because you know, you may not necessarily have that experience if you're watching this, right? I would recommend three workout plans to you, right? So I would recommend what I personally started off with when I started the gym: push pull legs. On push day, you train your chest, your triceps, and your shoulders. And the reason why this is called push day is because in order to stimulate all of those muscles, you need to push the weight. So on bench press, in order to stimulate the chest, you push the weight up. When you're doing triceps, you push the weight down or wherever. And then when you're doing shoulders, you push the weight up to the side or you push it back, right? Now, day two, which people would usually do on Wednesday, is a pull day, right? So a pull day consists of training your back and training your biceps. The reason why this is called a pull day, once again, because you need to pull the weight in order to target those muscles. You need to pull the weight for back, you need to pull the weight up for biceps. And the final day, the third day out of, you know, three, is legs, right? So you target your quads, your hamstrings, and your calves to start with primarily. There are other muscles, but you don't need to worry about them. And basically, I got my workout split in place. So what you would want to do is choose one of those three. And if you're not necessarily sure like what a workout plan would look like, or you're not necessarily sure what split to go to, I actually have a free push-pull leg program that you can access if you click the link down in the description below. It'll basically take you to a free community where I'm helping over 300 people just like you for free go from skinny to muscular, and all you've got to do is join the group, and then you'll basically have the workout plan, right? And yeah, that's that if you just want to see what it would look like. Once you've got the split you're going to do down to a T, then you want to go over the exercises, right? So, you know, you want to make sure you're doing more or less the same exercises every week, right? Because like if you went into the gym and you were doing different exercises every week, you were doing chest press here and then bench press here and then Smith machine press here and then machine chest press here, right? If you were doing all of these different movement patterns, that's just like trying to learn a different skill every single week. Or let's say this week you wanted to learn Spanish, and then the next week you wanted to learn French, and then the next week you wanted to learn German, right? You're not giving them essentially enough time, and you're not giving yourself enough time to learn, get good at it, learn the basic idioms of the languages, right? So, you know, you need to give yourself time on exercises to learn the technique, get better at it, develop a mind-muscle connection, get stronger, get bigger, increase the weight, and progressive overload on it, right? So it's very, very important that you're sort of sticking to the exercises. And, you know, once again, if you want to see, you know, how I would personally put exercises in a workout program, it's going to be in the top link in the description. And then once you've got your split and you've got the exercises in play, then, you know, you want to sort out the sets and the rep range, right? So the sets, how many times you essentially do an exercise in one motion, right? So let's say bench press, for example, you'd do 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps as an example, right? So you do 8 to 10 reps on bench press, and then you basically do that 3 times over, right? So that's essentially what you need to do for training. Just identify your workout plan and then identify your exercises for each muscle group, and then you want to identify the sets and the reps you're doing, right? That's all you need to do for the training side of things. Once you've got a workout plan and you can follow it, then I'm going to talk about that in sort of phase 2 of this video. Okay, the second part of building your foundations, or you know, the second pillar, right? Obviously about diet. Just like the importance of fuel to a car, or petrol if you're English, right? You know, or gas if you're American, I don't know. If you don't give your car petrol or fuel, then how do you expect it to function? How do you expect to drive it, right? You need to be filling it up with petrol when the tank is low. Like, you know, you need to fill your body up, therefore it has the fuel to grow. If you don't give it enough fuel, your body won't grow. If you don't give your car fuel, it's not going to be working, or it's not going to be able to go off. The main thing that we want to concern ourselves with in terms of diet is our calorie surplus, right? If you don't necessarily know what a calorie surplus is, it basically just consists of eating more than what your body would need in a day in order to gain weight, right? So, you know, put it really simply, every single person has, they have basically what's called your maintenance calorie requirement, right? So your maintenance calorie requirement basically refers to the amount of calories one needs to eat in a day in order to stay at the same weight, right? But obviously we want to increase the weight. We want to increase our weight. We want to gain muscle. We want to gain weight. So you don't want to eat at maintenance, but you want to eat up here in what's called a surplus, right? So basically these excess calories is what is going to gain the weight and gain the muscle, right? So what we want to do right now is I'm going to leave in the top link in the description a calorie calculator, right? You put in your details, it will ask you for your age, your gender, your weight, your activity levels and all that jazz, right? And then you basically want to click calculate, and then you want to scroll down, and then it's going to basically ask you or present to you an option, to like see how many calories you would need to gain weight, and then you basically go on there, and where it says 0.5 kilos a week, you basically want to have that as your primary calorie goal every single day, right? And in the execution phase of this video, I will go over how to build up to this essentially. And then once I've identified my calorie surplus, I now need to lay out a roadmap so I can achieve that goal every day, right? You know, it's the exact same thing. You know, if you have a destination but you don't have a route, then you're probably going to get lost on the way. And it's the exact same thing with this. If you don't have an idea of how you're going to achieve your calorie goal every day, then you're going to make it a lot more difficult for yourself. You're going to be suffering from decision fatigue because you're going to be going with the flow. So essentially, you want to be knowing, you want to know what you're going to do in advance, right? So, when are you going to eat throughout the day, right? What you want to do is identify times you can eat your meals basically every single day and keep them at that same time or as similar as possible. Not only will this help us sort of like make eating become more of an autonomous habit in our lives to the point where it will just become normal and we don't have to think about it, right? But also because it allows us to use our biology to our advantage, right? Because what us humans have is a hormone called ghrelin, right? This ghrelin hormone basically gets released, and when it gets released, it basically stimulates our appetite and we're hungry, right? If we start eating at the same times every day, what's going to happen is that this hormone is going to be regulated, therefore we're going to start to feel hungry at the same times every day. Once you've been eating consistently for like a week, your body's going to catch up to that and it's going to realize, okay, all right, I'm eating dinner at 5 p.m. every day, so now I'm going to, make myself hungry around 4:30. And, if you're feeling hungry when you eat your meals, then you're going to feel more incentivized to finish off the plate, right? Therefore, the likelihood of you getting your calories in is going to be a lot higher, right? So that's the first thing. So in terms of diet, identify your calorie surplus, and then you want to identify when you're going to eat your meals throughout the day. And in my personal opinion, I wouldn't recommend going anywhere below 4 meals a day, right? And the reason why that is because your stomach can't necessarily handle so many calories at once, right? Your digestion system gets so clogged up to the point where, it's going to really struggle to digest the foods, and like sort of use those calories and those nutrients efficiently, right? So like, the more you space out your calories, the less your stomach's gonna have to take in at one time. Therefore, your body can absorb the nutrients in a more efficient way. But that's sort of like going down to, the specifics of it. But anyways, I wouldn't recommend going below 4 meals a day. Go and find your meal times, right? And I'll give you an example. So in the morning, I personally train in the morning, right? And this is another thing. So I have been having my pre-workout meal at 7:30, right? I get down to the gym at 8, 8:15 on average nowadays. And then I get back, and then around like 10, I have my post-workout meal. And then around 2, I have my lunch. And then around 7 p.m, I have my dinner, right? And I've kept that consistently to the point where my body is aware of my habits. Therefore, I'm going to be, I'm going to be eating, like, I'm going to be finishing my meals, right? It's going to be a lot easier because I'm going to be hungry at those times, right? The next thing you want to essentially go over is what I've just said. When will you train so you can have a consistent pre and post workout meal, right? Obviously this is important to ensure that we're eating at the same times every day. What I would recommend is having a fixed time that you go to the gym when you're meant to train, right? So let's say you're meant to train 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Try and keep the time you go to the gym as consistent as possible. As I said, I'm at the gym around 8, 8:15, and that is the time I've been going to the gym. And what this also helps your body do is, recognize when it does physical activity every day. Therefore, it will subconsciously prime itself so you'll have better sessions. And then the final thing you want to plan for yourself is what will be your staple meals. I feel like the key to bulking easily and making it as time efficient as possible and just doing the least to get the most, it's not necessarily faffing around in your kitchen for like 2 hours at a time, right? You want to be in and out. You want to know exactly what you're having beforehand. Therefore, you're not going to suffer from decision fatigue, so you can put that energy into what you're cooking, right? So for example, I'll give you guys a great example. I have Greek yogurt, banana and honey as my staple pre-workout meal, and I've had that for a little bit, right? And because, I'm sort of like, I know I'm going to have that in advance and I've done it so many times, it's so much quicker, and the process just becomes so much easier compared to, oh, okay, if I woke up and I was going with the flow and I just looked in my fridge and I saw that I had the option to have eggs or whatever, right? If you're making these changes, it's just going to be more difficult, right? Like, for example, I've had rice combos for lunch, so tuna and rice, salmon and rice, mackerel and rice, chicken and rice, right? I've had rice combos for my lunch for probably the last 2.5 years, and it tastes fucking amazing, right? So find a handful of meals that you can just rotate and that you won't get bored of, right? That you can literally have every single day without getting bored. For example, one, like, as I just said, rice, right? You just want to eat those, and it will make bulking 10 times easier, right? It will make it so much easier. So that's basically building your foundations for diet. Calorie surplus. When will you eat? When will you have your? When will you train so you can have your pre and post workout meal at the same time? And what are going to be your staple meals that you can have every day without getting bored? The final thing about building your foundations is all in a recovery, right? Very, very simple, right? Rest days from the gym. If you train 4 times a week, get 3 rest days in every week. You need to let your body recover, right? Because even though you may be training chest on this day and you're training back on one day, your CNS, your central nervous system, is constantly being strained every day. So you need to give it some rest. And obviously the sleep factor is very, very important as well. Making sure not only you get enough sleep, but consistent sleep as well. Like, identify a half-an-hour window where you aim to go to bed every day, because you need to have a consistent sleep schedule. Because how do you think you're going to eat at the same time if one day you're going to bed at 3 a.m. and then you wake up at midday, or the next day you wake up at 10 a.m. and then you wake up at 7, right? You're going to be messing up your body clock, therefore you're going to be messing up your appetite as well, right? So they are the foundations that I look into at the start of every bulk, which has helped me gain 7 to 10 kilos in 180 days on 3 occasions, and I'm over halfway to doing that for a 4th time now, right? So the foundations, to sum it up: training, organise a workout split, know your exercises, get the sets and reps dialed in, and if you want to have a look, or you want a free workout plan that people are actually getting results on, check it down in the community. On the diet side of things, you want to look out for your calorie surplus. So by now you should have a surplus goal. You want to have a clear plan, a roadmap on how you're going to get to your destination, aka your calorie goal. So when will you eat? When are you going to train so you can have your pre and post workout meal at the same time? And what are going to be your staple meals? And in terms of recovery, make sure you have rest days from the gym, you're sleeping, and hydration as well. Start with those and you should be smashing it, right? So that is the foundations, and that should close the foundations. So you should essentially have them built up, or you should have an idea of what you're going to do, right? So section 2 is all about execution, right? So the first step in order to execute this properly is to have a little transition phase, right? So, you can't necessarily go from not taking care of your diet to eating 3,000 calories a day, or whatever your goal is, or you can't necessarily go from not being consistent with your training to then training 5 times a week really intense, right? You need to build it up step by step. Remember, we need to build the foundations before we can build the house. Or in other words, we need to get consistent first before we can start worrying about how our physique's going to look on top, right? So the first, obviously, thing we're going to go over is in terms of the training. So in terms of the transition phase of training, there are 2 things that we want to be sort of like focusing on, right? The first thing is you want to find what your working weights are, and the second thing is you want to just prioritize technique, right? So in terms of the working weights, you essentially just want to experiment with, how heavy you can go in alignment with your rep ranges, right? So what that basically means is, let's say you're doing bench press as one of your exercises, or let's say on the program in my community, the first exercise on a chest day is incline dumbbell chest press, and it's got a rep range of 6 to 10, right? What you basically want to do is find a weight where you are performing good technique on incline dumbbell chest press and you're getting around 6 reps. So you essentially want the weight to be heavy for you, you want it to be tough, you want it to be challenging, but just at the bottom of that rep range, right? And then what you want to do in the future is just keep working at that weight, and then you can increase it as you go. And I'm going to get onto the progressive overload side of things in just a minute, right? And whilst you want to do that, you just want to be prioritizing technique, right? Some exercises may be new to you. You don't want to be lifting heavy straight away, because if you do that with bad technique, you can easily get injured, right? So, you may want to go a bit lighter than what you found your working weight to be, and just really focus on the muscle, the technique. You need to become one with the muscle. One of my inspirations, who's up there on the bookshelf, Dorian Yates, he always said he became the muscle. He was the muscle. He always said, I am the muscle, right? When he was training back, he was the back. When he was training biceps, he was the biceps. You just really want to focus on connecting with the muscle, performing the exercise correctly, and that is how you are going to grow muscle and gain the weight you want to, right? Not by ego lifting. Okay, so onto the transition phase in terms of diet, right? So it's very, very simple. As I said, you don't want to go from not taking care of your diet to eating your calorie goal and eating your protein goal and being so precise with it every single day, but you essentially want to train your body to be able to withstand the food and slowly increase it as you go. Remember, you can't just go to straight to step 10 on the ladder. You've got to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, etc., etc., and then you'll get to step 10, right? So in terms of diet, we need to train our stomach and our appetite in order to be able to withstand food. So in terms of your stomach, what you basically want to do is just not eat in a surplus for the first couple of weeks. And that might sound mad, but you basically just need to get your stomach used to the amount of food it's going to intake, right? You know, like going straight from not taking care of your diet to fully locked in with your diet. It's like an athlete going, like skipping pre-season and going straight from vacation to the first match of their season, right? Their fitness is going to be awful. They're probably going to get injured. They're not going to perform good. And you know, before you know it, they'll be burnt out. Same thing with you, my friend, right? So, you know, what I would recommend and what I do is I get consistent at eating up my maintenance calories first. And what I basically do is just slowly increase my portions until I'm comfortable with eating up my surplus every single day, right? So, for example, for me, that may look like starting off my bulk, having 4 eggs in my egg meal, right? And then I would increase it to 5, and then 6, and then add another bagel, add an avocado, right? Just add little things as you go and slowly increase the calories in your portion, right? The second thing you want to do in order to, you know, transition with the diet is have the priority of eating your meals on time, right? Even in the first 2 to 3 weeks, obviously, you know, as I said, you don't want to be eating in a surplus because you need to train your body, right? But your main priority should just be eating on time so you can regulate your appetite. Therefore, when you do find that you're eating in a surplus, it's going to be a lot easier because you're going to be hungry at those times, right? So if you've just lied out for yourself that you're going to eat breakfast before you go to work at 7:30 in the morning, and then you're going to eat lunch at midday, and then you're going to have your pre-workout snack before you leave work at 4 p.m, and then you're going to have your post-workout meal or dinner at 7 p.m. when you get home, start eating at those times. Doesn't matter if you're not eating in the calorie surplus, you just need to train your body, right? And the final thing is to do with recovery, right? So very, very simple. Rest on your rest days, sleep well, stay hydrated. They're the main 3 that you just need to concern yourself with for now. There's obviously more stuff you can be doing. We don't need to get into that yet, right? So bear with me whilst I turn the page on my plan. So transition phase should be now done. So by this point, I have gone through the transition phase. I've trained my body to be able to eat a lot more than it could. I've, you know, found my working weights. I've got good on the technique, and I've got an idea of what I need to do. You can obviously still make improvements as you go. That's the game. You're a lifelong student in this game, right? And you're sleeping well, you're staying hydrated, and you're resting on the days you should be, right? All of that good jazz. Now it's time to go fucking hard, right? And make the progression line as bloody linear upwards as possible towards achieving our goal, right? We don't want to be going like this. We want to try and keep it as straight as bloody possible, right? So in terms of the training side of things, there are 3 sort of pillars in terms of training that you want to be focusing on, right? The first one is in terms of progressive overload. So if you're unfamiliar with what progressive overload is, you know, this is how you grow muscle. So essentially, you increase the difficulty of your gym sessions, therefore your muscles are forced to adapt and grow back bigger and stronger to meet those increased demands, right? But little does your muscle know, you're going to keep doing this, you're going to keep progressive overloading, therefore it's going to have to keep being forced to adapt and grow bigger, right? That is how muscle growth works, because like, you know, you need to give your muscle a reason to grow. If you're training comfortably, you're not pushing the weights, you're not doing as much as you could be, and you're still leaving energy in the tank, and you're not overloading the resistance or the difficulty of your sessions, you're not going to give your muscle a reason to grow bigger, right? Like, you know, the main reason our human body is as it is because we're, you know, everything is designed for to help us survive, right? And you know, if you start placing resistance against your body and you start to make progress, but then for some reason you stop increasing the weight, and you know, you don't train as hard, so you know, your body's not necessarily had a reason to adapt because it can survive, you know, it can survive when being placed against a resistance that you're used to, if that makes sense. So you've constantly got to be pushing yourself, and this is what progressive overload is all about. So there are three primary ways that we can progressive overload, right? So the first one is weight. So you know, increase the weight as you get stronger, as the exercise gets easier. The reps, right? So if you got 7 reps last week, go for 8 this week. And then the final thing is the intensity. So train harder than last time. Really push yourself. Really push yourself psychologically, because it is all a psychological game when you get down to the nitty gritty side of things, right? And this is essentially how I've built the muscle, right? Progressive overload. And you know, in terms of like how you know whether you should progressive overload or not, I and everyone else always uses your rep ranges as your guiding light, right? So remember earlier I told you to identify your rep ranges. This is what you need to do, and this is how you're progressive overloading, right? So essentially you work your way up the rep range. So let's go back to the bench press example. You're doing 6 to 10 reps on bench press. Okay, so you're at 60 kilos, right, on the weight. Week 1, you get 7 reps of 60 kilos. Okay, that means that you're at the lower end of the rep range. Therefore, you found a weight that is challenging enough and it's going to push you. Therefore, it's going to force your muscles to adapt eventually, right? Week 2, you come back and you get 8 reps, right? And then week 3, you come back and you get 10 reps and you did good technique. Therefore, because you've got to the end of the rep range, now you increase the weight to 62.5 kilos. And then you're probably going to get set back down to 6, 7 reps. Or if not, increase the weight again to 65 kilos, right? And this is exactly how you progressive overload with the weight, right? So, number 1, progressive overload. And you know, in order to actually keep a track of this, you want to be logging your workouts, right? I don't have it on me because my workout bag is in my car, but I basically have a logbook where I write down all of my exercises, all of my sets, and all of the reps I do, right? And this allows me to, before I go into the gym the week after, I have a look at this and I'm like, okay, how many reps did I do an incline Smith machine this week? I did 7. Okay, I'm now going to try and get 8 and beat that. That is how you keep track of it, right? Because it's very easy to forget, and you know, it just adds a little bit of fun to the game, right? The second thing that you need to consider in terms of training is that technique is king. I see so many people in the gym trying to lift way more than they actually can, and their form is sacrificed for that, right? And that is just ego lifting, and you know, it doesn't look cool. I've been there, and it's not cool. The risk to reward ratio is not it's not worth it. You're probably going to get injured at some point, and this is how you cause long-term injuries, and you essentially force yourself to quit the game very quickly, which is not good because the gym is a long-term game. As much as weight matters towards muscle growth, your your muscle can't tell whether it's lifting a 50 kilo or a 5 kilo dumbbell. Do you see eyes on your biceps? Do you see eyes hanging out your chest? Your nipples aren't eyes, but you know, I don't know. I'm just joking, but you know, you can't see your eye. Your muscle doesn't have eyes. That's what I'm trying to say. So, you know, it's all about how the muscle is stimulated, about how it's recruited, and you know, how hard it's worked and how efficiently it's worked, and that all comes down to technique, right? And then you want to combine technique with increasing the weight, and then you're going to make so many gains, brother, right? And the final thing that you want to consider, and what's really helped me in my progress, is what's called the 3-step framework. What my cousin a long time ago messaged me the 3-step framework, and you know, it just really lit a spark in, you know, it really changed my perspective on lifting, right? Because basically I sent him a video of me doing hack squat, like 3 plates a side on a hack squat, and my form was absolute dog shite, right? My heel was coming up off the platform, therefore I wasn't targeting my quad properly. I was going way too quickly, and I was probably going to get myself injured if I went heavier and if I carried on and if he didn't send me a message, right? So he sent me this 3-step framework, and this is the 3-step framework to building muscle nirvana, my friend. Okay, so step 1, technique, right? Step 2, or second rung on the ladder, tempo, and then the third rung is weight, right? So before you increase the weight, you need to make sure that you're performing the technique properly, you're not cheating anything, and that you're performing the tempo correctly, right? So tempo basically just refers to how fast or how slow you perform something. So in this case, you're performing a movement, you know, slow and controlled, right? Yeah, that's basically it for training. Moving on to the diet side of things. So by now, what I would have and what you should have as well, if you're following, is a calorie surplus, and you should have a plan. So when you're going to eat your meals, when are you going to train, so you can have consistent pre and post workout meals, right? And the final thing was, bloody hell, my plan. What are going to be your staple meals, right? Are you going to have an egg combo every day? What meals do you not get bored of? you want to have those things every damn day, right? So in terms of executing your diet correctly, eat at the same times every day, as we said, right? Stick to your staple meals and, you know, your recipes. You don't want to be overcomplicating anything, because, you know, the only thing our body is going to respond to is whether we get the calories in us or not. You know, the body can't necessarily tell what we're eating, but how much of it. Therefore, it's going to react in alignment with that, right? You know, like, you know, you know, if our body reacted to how, like, beautiful our foods were, then Gordon Ramsay would be the fattest man on the planet, and I'll be the skinniest man on the planet, right? Because my cooking is shite, but I get the calories in, so that's why I look like how I look, all right? So yeah, that's basically that. And you also want to make sure the foods that you're eating, or if you have to meal prep, just make sure they're easy to prepare. As I said, you don't want to be spending 2 bloody hours in the kitchen every day, right? And what I basically had, I'll run you through it. I had, on my previous bulk, I had 3,461 calories, and 240 grams of, no, how many calories is that? 240 times 4, what's that? 800 plus 160, 960. And 960 calories of that was protein. So I had 3,461 calories, 240 grams of protein in just 4 meals, right? So just make sure your foods are calorie dense, they're simple, and they're fucking delicious as well. Alright, so the next thing that I want to go over. So onto the final part of sort of the execution side of things, so the recovery. As I said, I was training 4 times a week, therefore I was having 3 rest days. I was going in a spa once a week. I'm fortunate enough to have access to a spa, you know, somewhere. I'm not going to tell you where it is. Some of you will know, obviously. But But, you know, I was making sure I was getting my recovery in through there, keeping myself hydrated, sleeping well, sleeping consistently, getting anywhere from 7 to 8 hours a night, or trying to aim for that anyway. You know, I'm not going to say I was perfect, but also active rest as well. Going on a walk, right? Walk, you know, making sure you're getting active and you're walking about. Especially for me, I'm on my laptop doing all of this shit all the time. So, you know, it's very important that I get up, not only for my mental sanity, but also for my health as well. It's proof that if you go on a 10-minute walk a day, or you're just active for 10 minutes, your longevity, you're going to live longer, mate, right? So it's very, very important. Now, on to the final part of this video, because I know this is dragging on, is the mental side of things, right? There is no Ryan Bulk without addressing the mental game, right? It looks glamorous, it looks fun, it looks entertaining, it looks enjoyable, right? But I can tell you there are phases in time where it's the complete opposite to that, right? You need to prepare for battle. There are going to be easy times, but there are also going to be hard times. If you are trying to grow as a human, if you're trying to evolve and transcend into another person or another identity, your current reality isn't necessarily going to like that, right? And your current self, your current situation is going to be pulling on everything it has to make sure that it survives and that your evolving self doesn't manifest into reality, right? Or in other words, you know, it's going to be very hard to carry out the actions, and you're going to feel a lot of resistance and a lot of friction all the time. For example, there are times where you may not necessarily want to go to the gym. That's just an example, right? You need to prepare yourself for this battle. There are going to be times where you get in late from work or whatever, and you know you need to go to sleep, but you got to get a final meal in. You got to take the trade-off sometimes. There are going to be times where you wake up feeling tired, but you got to get out of bed because you've got to do the work, whether that's gym, go to your job, look after your kids, whatever. You've got to prepare yourself mentally and acknowledge that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? Because for every enjoyable, fun session, there is going to be a tough session, right? As Newton's third law suggests, every action has an equal opposite reaction, right? So, you know, if there's fun times, there's also going to be difficult times. It's just part of the journey, part of the process, and you've got to mentally prepare yourself for that. The second thing that I want to go over is my relationship with pain, right? Yeah, me and pain are together. Yeah. No, not that type of relationship, right? But like how I perceive pain to be, essentially. So, you know, we all, as humans, we see pain as a bad thing, right? Trust me, I fucking see it as a bad thing. Well, I used to, and I've been there. I've broken both of my legs, not at the same time, but a year apart. I've broken this bone here. God knows how many ankles I've twisted, right? I've been through the wars. You know, I've had knee problems in my past. I've been injured a shit ton, and it is very painful, and I would not wish anyone to go there, right? You know, every time I see that someone's broken their leg, it just reminds me of the fucking pain that it caused me, right? Um, you know, like, obviously, no human wants to necessarily go through that much pain, but you've got to realize that pain is a mechanism produced by the human body to help us survive, right? Because if we didn't necessarily feel pain, then we'd carry on doing the thing, right? For example, right, boxing, right? If a boxer didn't feel pain, or, you know, your human body didn't respond to a ridiculously fast punch or a powerful punch, then you would keep going. What is that going to do? That's going to end in brain damage and death, right? But because boxers feel pain or they get knocked unconscious, it stops. That's your body telling you, okay, you need to stop, otherwise something can really fuck up here, right? So you need to sort of just sort of reassess your perception on pain and actually think of it as, you know, a good thing in that sense, because it essentially keeps us alive, right? And, you know, you need to, take this definition and this perception of pain into the gym, in the fact that, you know, when the muscle starts to burn and when it's in pain, right, your body is just trying to do the good thing by telling you to stop, but your body doesn't know that it's productive pain, right? So you need to just fucking grit your teeth and go to that mental place, wherever that is. You know, really just think of, you know, what got you into the gym. You know, if a girl dumped you, or a girl rejected you, or, you know, whatever got you into the gym, go to that place and that will just turn on another gear, right? And then you just keep going until you can't, right? And the reason why I'm addressing the mental game is because your mind gives up before your body, right? And once you get past this mental barrier, then you can fulfill the true potential your body has in the gym. And that is me done. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video or you've learnt something, make sure you drop a like, drop a subscription as well. And if you want coaching, go into the free community. I will help you. We can also hop on a call as well. Get to know each other. Surround yourself with people just like yourself on the same journey is very, very important. And that's actually something else. Accountability. I train with good people. I talk to good people. I read books, as you can see on the bookshelf. I watch YouTube videos about the gym. You know, making sure you're holding yourself accountable and optimizing your environment in alignment with your goals is also something very important. But yeah, I'll leave you be. If I see you in the community, I'll see you in there. If I don't worry. See you soon.